Before we start this silent story, I would like to thank you all for subscribing to my YouTube channel, as we just reached 500 subscribers, and I am already thinking of a special way to celebrate such an achievement. But first, all you need a Onika story by Naomi IP _ Beyonce's POV. Beyonce quickly pulled out her red bedazzled gun, shooting down a large buff white man in the chest, watching his body fall over before looking down at her long acrylic nails. It's such a shame it had to end this way, she thought out loud, shaking her head. He had been one of her most trusted men for quite a while, that is, before he tried to embezzle money from her. He had claimed that it was for his family, but she knew that wasn't true. She gave each of her members a lump sum of money to make up for any danger she may be putting them in. She might be ruthless, but she also made sure to take care of her own. Unfortunately for him, after she learned of his betrayal, she no longer considered him one of her own. She turned around and walked away, two other large men following behind her, back at the body and shaking their heads before quickly catching up with her. Beyonce was quickly growing bored with being the queen-pin of New York. Sure, you could say that she just needed to grow into it, but that just wasn't how she felt. Beyonce felt as if it all came too easy for her. The thrill of the chase was what held her attention and kept her interested. But once she had finally gotten what she wanted, she was growing bored. But no, she wouldn't give up this life for anything in the world. She knew there was a chance that something new could develop at any time. That idea still wasn't doing much to console her at the moment anyway. She wanted to go out and do something fun. "Solange!" she yelled, calling out to her sister, who was also in the building. "Yes?" she heard Solange yell back, her tone indicating that she didn't want to be bothered. "Drop that attitude, come on! I'm bored, so we're going out," she yelled out again, knowing that Solange will quickly come down after hearing that. Just as she thought she heard loud thudding on the steps before Solange revealed herself in a tight and short black dress. "Well, what are you waiting for? Let's go," Solange yelled. I smirked before nodding my head and following Solange out of the building. Walking up to her 2015 Ferrari 458 Spider, she opened the front door and quickly sat inside, waiting for Solange to get in as well before quickly driving off and pressing the detonator that she had clipped to the top of the interior of the car. She heard the roar of the explosion in the distance and smirked to herself before speeding up and flying through traffic. "Didn't have to blow it up. They weren't all bad, babe," Solange stated before chuckling. Beyonce shook her head and laughed, knowing that Solange hadn't really cared. "Yeah, I didn't need them, but that's less competition for us. Besides, I got a little bit of thrill from it," Beyonce replied before laughing again and pulling up to their destination. It was a strip club. If there's any place in the world that she could get the rush she's looking for, this would be a good place to search. But what could she say? Everyone knew that Beyonce loved beautiful, big black women. It didn't matter their color or size. If she wants you, then she gets you. That's what it's like being at the top of the crime world. Maybe that's what made her lose interest. It's not that she wanted to get bored of them, or she did it for fun either. Of course, she was looking for entertainment, but she also wanted real love too. She just felt that no one could keep up with her. and all the hoes that she would bring to bed wouldn't fulfill her desire for a deep connection. She wanted someone who would challenge her. She also wanted to be taken care of as well. Sure, she loved spoiling the woman that had her interests, but just once she wanted to be on an equal footing with someone else. She and Solange quickly got out of the car and walked directly towards the front of the line. She told them her name, and they swiftly moved aside and opened the red stanchion, letting her and Solange into the building. They entered and headed straight for the VIP section. Beyonce was very well known for being part of some type of drug syndicate, although this was nowhere near the truth, and she was much powerful than anyone knew. She was not just the queen pin of New York, but also the capomandamento of New York's Italian-American mafia. Although she came from Texas, she quickly got acquainted with the mafia and rose in the ranks. There were many that didn't know the difference between the two, but anyone who had gotten involved with the mafia knew how much more intense and influential they were, especially in New York City. There's no doubt that the mafia is more powerful than any measly gang. Considering that Beyonce dominated them both, she was a very important person. Not only that, but she also was a very powerful person. No one denied her. She had begun to dominate in things, both legal and illegal. There were no figureheads or cover-ups for her. She had her people everywhere. CEOs, police officers, and more. There was no one more powerful than Beyonce. She took her seat in the front of the VIP section and waited for the show to begin. Onika's POV. Onika, Kelly, Kehlani, and Rihanna were all chilling at Nicki's house before starting to get ready for work at the club. Onika and Rihanna had been best friends since childhood, doing everything together in the Bronx. Nicki was from Trinidad, and Rihanna was from when they had no one else, they always knew they had each other. That being said, neither of them were even remotely wealthy. As a matter of fact, they had both been struggling when Rihanna had seen a hiring poster for the strip club. They decided they would do it together, just as anyone else. It also was where they met Kelly and Kehlani. For Rihanna and Kelly, it had been lust at first sight. That's why it worked out so well for them when they were assigned as partners on theme days at the club. As for the groups as a whole, they hit it off very well. They easily grew closer as they performed together more and more. And while both Kehlani and Onika agreed that the other was attractive, they'd only seen each other as mutuals, not like Rihanna and Kelly. Whenever they all had shift together, they would choose one of their houses to go to do their pre-workout ritual together. It basically consisted of chilling, eating snacks, stretching, finding outfits to wear, and putting on makeup. But if any of them were to be completely honest, they all knew that they just laid around being lazy and watching Criminal Minds more than anyone else. They loved the time they spent together, though. And not only that, but friends who make money stay together, right? So for them, their friendship was the best thing to ever happen in their lives. They loved each other dearly and knew they would do anything for one another. And all of them were feisty too, especially Rihanna. People from Barbados were like that, though. And she loved to represent her birth country. If you thought you could hurt one of them, you would have to deal with all of them. They would never let anyone hurt or take advantage of one of their friends. They're quite literally the definition of friends who slay together, stay together. Today was no different. It was finally time for them to start getting ready for work after indulging in a large number of snacks and treats. Being a stripper definitely gave them an excess amount of money, and what better way to spend it than on foods? Again, though, just because they had an excess amount of money didn't make them necessarily wealthy. They had just come to realize that they needed to save their money. They wanted to live an easier life. After all, the strip club had no healthcare plan at all, and they had to pay for most amenities themselves. Speaking of which, they definitely needed to hurry up and get started with their stretching. After eating all that food, they were feeling a little bloated. They needed time to stretch so that they would finally be ready to perform by the time they get there. Once they had finally finished stretching and putting on their outfits and makeup, they had all gathered in one car and drove to the club. Walking in and heading straight towards the employee area of the club, they all decided to relax until it was finally time for the club to open. You know, I don't ever think I'll ever get used to doing this, Onika said. Rihanna shook her head and laughed. Rihanna knew that Onika loved the attention that she got while she was on stage. It made Rihanna happy that Onika could have a better life, could have been happy with the job that they found. She had only wanted the best for her friend, and she was glad that she was making good money and still having fun. Now, Nicki, you know that I don't have to exactly how you feel about this job. You love the thrill, don't even lie, my sister. You've always liked to go out and have fun with my influence, of course, Rihanna said with a thick Caribbean accent and a wink, making Onika laugh. You know me well, Nicki giggled out before leaning her head onto Rihanna's shoulder. It was finally time for Onika to get up on stage. The light in the front of the area turned off as she walked towards the pole in her luminescent outfit. In the dark, all the audience could see was the outline of her body as she sensually slid down the pole. Beyonce was immediately intrigued once she saw the lights go out, and a body with voluptuous curves, specifically in the nether regions, walked onto the stage. Though she could see the outline, she could also see each and every curve from her seat in the front row. And once Onika pulled herself up onto the pole to spin around, Beyonce knew that she was the one she wanted to spend her money on for the night. Onika slowly slid down the pole before sticking her right leg out and circling it around the pole. She used her left foot to maneuver herself around the pole before she locked into the crowd and made eye contact with the Queen Beyonce. She slowly licked her lips before sliding her body up and down the pole, before letting out a moan loud enough for the crowd to hear. It was obvious that she did it on purpose, but it didn't change how deliciously the sweet noise went. Beyonce leaned forward out of her seat and again made eye contact with Onika, before sticking her hand out. A stack of 100 was immediately placed in her hands, where she quickly took the band off and counted the money out. It was $1,000, a stack. She didn't think that was enough, so she stuck out her hand for a couple more stacks. She took the bands off the rest of them before leaning back in her seat and beginning to throw the cash on stage. One by one, the bills floated onto the stage as Onika grounded herself into the pole, keeping her eyes locked onto the intriguing, tall, voluminous, melanated woman. Nicki knew the rules of the game, and keeping the big spenders entertained was one of them. And it didn't hurt that she found the honey blonde woman extremely attractive. The lights in the room had finally flashed on, giving everyone a view of what Nicki truly looked like. The light, complex woman took her time looking Onika up and down before licking her lips. She watched as Nicki swiftly moved her body, flowing smoothly around the pole before dropping down into a split. She began bouncing her ass up and down, twerking in the split before spinning her legs around front to stand. She slowly walked forward and off the stage, bringing herself right in front of Beyonce. Her guards, which were stationed in the club, started walking up to block Onika's way before Beyonce waved them off. Onika continued stalking closer to Beyonce. Before straddling her lap, she sensually ground her core into Beyonce as she flipped her hair over her shoulder and leaned her body closer into the blonde girl's neck before licking it and whispering into the woman's ear. "Thank you, Daddy." Beyonce grabbed the caramel girl's hips, grinding Nicki's cores into hers before letting her go. Nicki turned her body around and ground her ass into Beyonce's core. She then stood up and gave Beyonce a wink before stalking back towards the stage. The Harajuku Bobby twirled around the pole one more time before the lights turned back off and Nicki exited the stage. Rihanna, who had been watching from backstage with her red hair, walked up to Nicki and started bouncing around, asking who the girl she was dancing with. Meanwhile, Beyonce and Solange were still sitting in their seats as the guards picked up the money that she threw on the ground and gathered it in a bag to give to Onika. "I told you this place would be fun," Solange said in excitement, happy that her sister was finally showing interest in someone. "Girl, you ain't tell me nothing. I'm the one who told you we were going out," Beyonce replied, rolling her eyes comedically at Solange. She could be annoying sometimes, but her sister was her best friend and she still loved her. Anyways, Beyonce started giving Solange a little glare. "Let's go to the back. I want to talk to that girl and bring the bag of money with you." She started directing the last sentence towards her guard so that she could personally deliver the money to this extravagant, dark, melanated woman. As Beyonce and Solange, along with a few guards, made their way back towards the entrance, the owner of the club stepped in front of them. "What the fuck do you want, brah? And who told you that you can step into my space?" Beyonce said, looking Devontae up and down before frowning at him. "Don't be like that, bae. You know I just wanted to come say hi to my girl." He started smirking at her before reaching his hand over to touch her cheek. "The real question is, who do you think you are? 'Cause you're not about to be all up in my sister like that," Solange yelled, slapping his hand away before it could reach Beyonce's face. He was then immediately surrounded by guards, each with their guns pointed at him. "Come on, man. You know I was playing," he said, smacking his lips and shaking his head. "And you know I don't play, Deontay. So stay out of my face before I shoot your ass and take over this whole place." She stepped, pausing to think for a second before continuing to speak. "As a matter of fact, I think I'm gonna take it out over anyways." She looked at him once before nodding her head. "Come on, Beyonce, please don't do this. I own this place. This is my territory. And for future reference, my name is Devontae, not Dante," he said as his body began to shake when he noticed some of the men walking towards him. Solange began laughing maniacally. She knew exactly how her sister would react to his correction, especially since she was already agitated. "Sorry, not sorry, but there will be no future reference for you. Not anymore. I've given you too many chances, and you obviously believe that you have more control than you actually do. You have no territory. This is all mine. I'm the one making an excuse for you." She spat before waving her hand and letting her guards take care of the mess. Everyone working with Beyonce knew that she didn't play games, especially with people who were her insubordinates. And all of her workers knew this. It was all her turf, whether people knew she was the capo or not. She knew the power and influence she held, and she would use all of it. And it seemed that she would need to place someone else in charge of this club, since people didn't know how to act, especially this Deontay character. That man was as good as dead, and of course she knew that. It was her policy, after all, no second chances. She sent one of her guards to take over the club for the rest of the day. She would have to find someone to take over the position, but for now, her first priority was finding the stripper that she was entranced with on the stage. She and Solange continued walking towards the back until she got to the dressing room. She hastily opened the door and looked around. All the girls in the room looked at them with confusion and fear. The girl in question walked out of the door connected to the room and turned her head to see what the other girls were staring at. Beyonce quickly took notice of her and grabbed her arm to drag her out of the room. Rihanna, who Beyonce hadn't noticed, walked out of the door as well, quickly voiced her objections. Hey, what do you think you're doing? What the fuck do you think you are here? You know? She yelled before grabbing Nicki's other arm and pulling her towards herself. Beyonce shook her head and decided not to hurt her, considering she was worried about her friend. But she sure as hell wouldn't let it slide again. Nah, the real question is, who do you think you are? I feel like I'm having the same argument way too many times today, Solange yelled out, getting annoyed having had the same argument within 30 minutes of each other. It's okay, Solange. Just leave it for now. We'll deal with it some other time, she said, smiling towards Solange before speaking to everyone else. I'm the new owner of this fine establishment, she drawled out while looking around the room to see everyone's reactions. They all shared the same shocked look, and although none of them liked their boss, they knew he was the one who owned the place. By the shocked look on your faces, most of you beauties must be new here. After all, this club is part of my territory. Well, really, everything you've seen in the city is my turf. And it's going to be that way for a long while. Beyonce spoke softly, looking each and every one of them in their eyes. And as for your old boss, well, let's just say the only place you'll be seeing him from now is in the afterlife. She spoke with authority before smirking again. This seemed to shake everyone out of their stupor, and as began to hear a bunch of questioning remarks. Quiet, she yelled, hating when she gets interrupted when she's speaking. Solange quietly chuckled, finding it entertaining when her sister was annoyed. Now, as why I'm back here for you, you may be wondering. I'm here and nothing else. I'll just take her and go. She looked down to Onika as she spoke, gazing into her eyes before looking up at everyone else again. Hey man, bro. You can't really think we're just going to let you out to walk here? Rihanna yelled again, shaking her head, not believing that the woman in front of her was this stupid. Solange started walking forward, irritated, ready to fucking bust this girl in. Beyonce grabbed her arm, shaking her head before speaking again. I don't believe you. I asked you, little girl. I'm gonna take her and go, whether you like it or not. And haven't you noticed that you're the only one protesting? Even the girl herself isn't saying anything. She replied to Rihanna, getting more annoyed that she kept stopping her. It's okay, Rihanna, honestly. This is the girl I danced with, and I promised it was my turn to perform. Just let me see what she wants. Promise. I'll text you or call you if anything goes wrong. Onika begged, wanting her friend to just let it go, noticing the fierce look in Beyonce's eyes. Fine, but if anything happens to you, it's your head, Rihanna spat before stopping out. I doubt it. Beyonce replied one last time before dragging Onika out of the room and straight to her car. Once inside the car, she realized she had left Solange behind and texted Solange telling her to meet her at the park in 30 minutes and that she could have fun in the meantime. She responded with an okay and a smiley winky face, and Beyonce took that as a sign to take off. They had stopped at a nearby park surrounded by shrubs and greenery. It was a big water fountain in the middle with blue lights shining through the water. Onika had to admit it was honestly a very beautiful place. Onika did, however, get a little weary when another car pulled up behind them. Don't worry, it's just my people with your money, she said before turning her head to smile at Onika. Listen, here's the deal. Beyonce started and Onika looked down. She had a bad feeling about this. I have a proposition for you. You don't even know my name, and you want to make a deal with me? Nicki questioned, getting increasingly worried about whatever this deal was. Well, the solution to that is simple, love. Just tell me your name, Beyonce said, rolling her eyes as if Nicki had no point in her objection. I think I could do you one better, Nicki replied, giving her a sarcastic smile, mocking her. I could collect the money you threw at me on stage and then get the hell home. She finished still, giving Beyonce that sarcastically sweet smile. Darling, I think you're forgetting one thing. Everything in the city belongs to me. Any cafe, store, entertainment center, and home that you have gone to in the city is mine. Now let's treat each other civilly, okay? After all, I only asked for your name, Beyonce stated haughtily, returning Nicki's sarcastic smile. Whatever, Beyonce. My name is Onika Tanya Mirage, but my friends just call me Nicki. Beyonce raised her eyebrow as Nicki said her name, realizing that she had never told her. She shook her head before laughing. There was obviously more to Onika than what meets your eye. Nicki looked at her weirdly before her eyes popped, realizing her slip-up. Although Onika is a stripper, she's more important than she looks. After all, she is the capo's daughter. Well, the former capo's daughter. Not that she knows that yet. Although she hasn't heard from her dad in a while, she thought he was just on another one of his excursions. He went off grid without keeping contact with his daughter. Yeah, it was kind of sucky, and without his financial aid, she fell on hard times. But she still loved him anyways. It felt more like an obligation for her to love him than anything else. Beyonce, on the other hand, recognized Nicki's name right away. She knew that she had taken over her father's home after she killed him. She coughed to hide the giggle that she let out before bursting into full-blown laughter. Of course, she didn't want to break Onika's heart after realizing this, but at the same time, she can't change what happened. It's better to tell her the truth now rather than have it revealed later. Well then, it's nice to meet you, Onika. And now that I have your name, it's only fair that you consider my proposition, no? But I just have one question for you. Where's your father? Now, Beyonce knew this wasn't the best way to go telling Onika that her father, but she loved being problematic. It gave her a thrill and brought entertainment into her rather boring thug life. Nicki let out a gasp before looking at Beyonce with wide eyes. It made sense to her now why Beyonce was so confident about owning the city. She didn't care much about her father, though, considering that he had left her to live in poverty and squalor. But he was still the only family she had. Well, that she knew of anyways. Nicki felt a little disappointed in herself that she didn't really care what happened to the man that she called her dad. So she asked Beyonce about it anyways. What happened to my dad? What did you do to him? And is he okay? Do I need to call him? Did you come to finish the job? Onika yelled out each of her questions, wanting to know if this would be her last moments alive. She would at least get to be with her mother that way. Kill you? Beyonce responded in question. Why would I kill you? In fact, I want to do the exact opposite. I want you to be mine. There are a lot of things your father hadn't told you, little girl. But that has nothing to do with why I'm here. I don't even know it was you until you said your name. Beyonce responded boredly. She hated being accused, even if it wasn't something that she did. In this case, however, it had nothing to do with that she was here for. She was beginning to get tired of this conversation. All she wanted at this point was to tell Onika about the deal, give her the money, and go to home to rest. After all, tomorrow would be a big day. She needed her beauty rest, and what could she say? A mob boss needed practice and self-care. Just then a knock on the door was heard, pulling their attention away from each other as they bound each other to see the noise. Beyonce recognized this man as one of the guards, and smiled when she looked down to seize the large bag in her hand. She waved him over to her side of the car and opened the door to step out and grab it. She then walked to Onika's side and opened the door. She held out her hand to help her pull her up and began softly dragging her towards the nearest bench. They both looked at the water fountain glowing with a beautiful hue as Beyonce began to speak again. Listen, Onika, my goal here is not to harm you. Like I said before, I have a proposition for you. I want you to be mine, and trust and believe that I get whatever I want. I want someone who will fight back, someone who can stand on an equal footing with me and love my scars. I'm tired of sleeping around. It's gotten boring, and I want to experience true love. And when I saw you, I just knew that it had to be you. Beyonce finished, pausing to let Nicki process what she had just said. That's when the big sum of cash was revealed to the right of Beyonce. It was in a duffel bag, and Onika gasped at the amount of money. It looked like one of the duffel bags that her father used to carry around when she remembered seeing him early in her childhood. Nicki thought about the proposal and asked for further clarification. "Beyonce, what do you want me to do?" And Beyonce responded, "I want you to love me." And Nicki was stunned. She didn't know what to do, but at the same time, she was attracted to this woman. Not just attracted to her wealth and her power, because anyone would be attracted to those two things, but she was just naturally attracted to the tall girl from Texas. She was attracted to her dangerous side, attracted to her fierceness and her ambition, and just attracted her in general. After thinking it over, Beyonce was about to agree, but rather than vocalize it like anyone else, she decided the best way to confirm it would be by kissing Beyonce. So she went in for the kiss, and Beyonce responded, both of them now in an intense makeout session. Onika laid her enormous posterior on the lap of Beyonce, causing both of their nether regions to get wet by the friction. After all, they were both two of the most gorgeous women in the city, so naturally they turned each other on. They continued their makeout session, Beyonce wanting a nice feel for Onika's big titties and moved her mouth towards the areola of Nicki's left breast and began sucking on it like a baby. Nicki let out a moan. It was very easy for Beyonce to get a hold of her bare nipple because Nicki was still in her stripping uniform that she was in at the club. After all, it was a warm New York summer night, very humid, and she could easily stay in her stripping attire, even though it revealed a lot of clothes because of the warmness of the sun. Beyonce continued sucking at the nipple, wanting to get courageous to see where Onika would go. She went to the duffel bag full of cash, and Nicki gasped to see what Beyonce pulled out. It was a strap-on. Beyonce looked into Nicki's eyes. "Nicki, are you okay with this?" Nicki bit her lip. She was kind of a nymphomaniac, but just like Beyonce, she did want to settle down after a while. After all, that's why she kind of agreed to the deal. But getting penetrated in the middle of the park, then again, Beyonce said she owned everything, and Nicki, being the capo's daughter, would know a little thing about the influence that the capo had. So, with her wild side emerging, Nicki said yes, and Beyonce stripped down, so her level of nakedness matched the stripping uniform of Nicki, and she attached the strap-on to the waist region of her body. Onika quickly just moved her thong to the side. As I stated before, she was still in her stripping uniform, making it very easy to reveal her exposed private part. Beyonce went and rubbed Nicki's private parts with her 2 fingers. Both of them being women meant that both of them knew their way around a female sex organ. And Beyonce stroked softly, making sure to rub the sensitive areas that Nicki would respond to with a loud gasping moan, and making sure to slightly rub the peak of the clit and massage Nicki's labia. Nicki was already very ready for penetration, as her hole was getting loose from Beyonce's finger play. So Beyonce let the strap-on enter Nicki's hole and thrust it in and out for a while. Nicki was surprised with Beyonce's moves, as they were highly skilled, and as soon as the penetration began, Onika would cream in climax at the penetration, along with a finger play. She quickly got up, trying to clean what she can with a little paper towel that she always kept with her. And Beyonce smiled, letting her back into the car that they got out of. The car ride home was quiet, but it was marked by Beyonce massaging Nicki's shoulder and doing some soft and subtle cuddling. But they soon arrived at Nicki's house that she lived in with Rihanna, and Beyonce gave the duffel bag to Nicki, saying, "I guess I'll see you Wednesday," and winked. Then Beyonce was off, but right as she left, Nicki got a text notification from her phone. Nicki was wondering how the hell Beyonce could even get her phone number without asking, but she couldn't really question the mafia boss leader. She went inside and greeted Rihanna, wondering where this wild journey would take her. But for now, she would just celebrate with her friends. The end.